Hello, everyone, especially those of you that are in South Sudan and those of you who are here in the Western world. Today, I would like to direct my message to a special group of people that are dear to my heart, and those are my fellow South Sudanese. There's a lot of things that we can learn from the situations that are occurring in our country, and also reflect on the history of our country and how we got our independence today. The first thing we have to acknowledge, yes, the liberators of our country did do their job and they happened to give us a country today. But we also need to reflect on the history of our liberators, the SPLA, SPLM, Sudan People Liberation Army or movement. When it began in 1983, it didn't take them 2 to 3 years before they start butchering themselves. There are three ideologies that was a birthmark and also an obstacle to the SPLA or SPLM. The first thing is our government, our way. If you don't like it, we kill you. Not sure where it started from, but as soon as SPLA became a movement, there was already South Sudanese that were fighting against the regime that was in Khartoum and want an independent country. When they met with those groups, the Nyanya 1 and also the Nyanya 2, because first they encountered Nyanya 1. So there was division already. There was an ideology that came with the SPLA and also the Nyanya 1 already possessed. The Nyanya 1 were nationalists. The SPLA were not. So their mindset was our government, our way, and they clashed. They began to kill one another. And then that led to the second ideology. If you're not loyal to me, I'm going to mark you as a rebel. When you look at it, this is something they pick up from the Khartoum regime because they themselves are rebels. But then they're calling others that disagree with them rebels, and they're rebels. So they operate on loyal. They don't care what your perception is or perspective on certain issues. All they care about is being loyal. And this has killed so many of the SPLA and also their network. Even those that want to work with them, Anyanya 1 want to work with them, they couldn't because this ideology was just conflicting in so many ways. Because in a movement, there has to be a ways for you to be able to work together and network. The last ideology that SPLA possess is politicizing certain issues for their personal gain. And this takes me to the next point that we today can see. The incident in Nasser is politicized by the leaders in SPLM or SPLA. Now they call themselves South Sudan People Defense Forces after they were labeled as a terrorist organization because SPLA has been murdering its citizens, looting their properties, also even going as far as using transnational repression on neighboring countries. Because even back in the day, the SPLA was kidnapping, abducting its fellow citizens from neighboring countries and butchering them. when you look at it, these three ideologies today still possess and are still killing our people. If we look at the Nasser incident, the late General Majordak and also Tor have been in Nasser this whole time and have tried to reconcile. And both men knew each other because they were both leaders. General Majordak was stationed in Nasser over eight years and never been relieved. 8 years without even seeing his own family. And had he said something, the SSPDF would have later labeled him as a rebel. They would have used the ideology, our government, our way, if you disagree, we kill you. You're not loyal to us. And then they would politicize his concern and also his deep understanding of the situation in South Sudan against him. If we look at the funeral today, if you don't know who General Majordak is, then you have no idea who he is, because none of them, all these leaders that came to his funeral, never mentioned what he did for a living, how he was as a person, how he was as a soldier. None of those were mentioned. The SPLA, SPLM elites came again with their ideologies, speaking on their hatred, pouring out things that are actually not beneficial for the citizens. They pour out things that are more derailing to the peace process and the process of reconciliation. So the only person that really spoke well, who is still a nationalist, is Rebecca Nyandengarang. She said some great things that are healing to the South Sudanese people. Other than that, I would say majority of those that spoke at Majordak funeral have never once cared enough and said, you know what, General Majordak should go and visit his family. None of them. I wonder how many of them have even called. Have called his family, have called his wife and kids, have even checked his kids at school. Even the difficulties his kids were having, because I'm sure they were having difficulties even at schools where you can't even see your own father for over 9 years. So, my fellow South Sudanese, we need to refrain from these three ideologies that SPLA use in order for us to kill ourselves. Because these ideologies lead to what? Divisions and hatred. They operate off of this. This is what keeps SPLA going since day one. These three ideologies helps them to create division among us and then hatred. Let me come back to reality. For those of you that are not really aware of the South Sudan crisis, if you are a South Sudanese and you're not aware of this, you probably grew up in a home where you hear these name callings of other tribes, of division. Now you grow up to think this is the right way to think, but that's not what's happening in South Sudan. If we look at what's happening to Dinkas, I'm a Nuer, and I have family members that have been victims. Even in this Nasser incident, we have over hundreds of families that we had to lay to rest. Targila was my nephew. But I would say this. Majority of us do not understand the psychological trapment are embedded in our minds by the SPLA, SPLM leadership. majority of the Dinkas, or I would just say all Dinkas, are suffering in this mess that's created by these leaders. Kir has probably killed more Dinkas than any other tribes. Self-care mentality is this: if you're a Dinka and you disagree with me, this is our government. We should run it our way. And if you disagree, you're a rebel and I should deal with you and I should have no mercy. If we look at the situation that happened between him and Paul Malone, as soon as Paul Malone left, he began to kill a lot of people from Mandinga Will. I remember there was a young guy that was murdered and they threw his body in Tongping because he was among the members with Paul Malone. Before you know, a month later, people were burned in Awil. And I think we came out and denied this, but people were burned in their sleep just because they're from the same area as Paul Malone. If we look at the situations in Juba, or I would say Lake State, all their diplomats, starting with Talar Ring, majority of them are gone. And the government has a hand in this. We look at Awil, we still have few generals from Awil, but majority of them are also gone. If you go to Tun is, I mean, the killing that has been going on in Tun, starting with the disarmament by General Rain Twin, I mean, people were just dying. They were clashing with SSPDF because SSPDF were in their areas telling them what to do. And we also go to Twitch Mayadi, where he's from, where the president from. Twitch Mayadi never had a problem with Abiy. But a year ago, or 2 years ago, they fought themselves. And those in Juba were fueling this. And Kir was able to supply weapons in so many ways just to keep them fighting each other. As you can see, today in South Sudan, if you're a Dinka, the leaders in the leaders in Juba are telling you, it's our government, our way. If you disagree with us, you are a rebel. Imagine the psychological trapment that you have to be in if you're a Dinka. On the other side, other tribes hate you for what the leaders are doing. Imagine what kind of psychological torment that is going on if you're a Dinka. We on this other side, as other tribes, we feel like we're also being targeted. And yes, there has been instance in other tribes, and particularly Nuer, of a lot of killings that's been going on by the leaders in Juba. So the main thing is this: in order for us to be free as people, these three ideologies that SPLA possess, we need to refrain from. Let's take a look at what Bull Mail said today. If we look at for many of you might agree with me, the more Bull Mail is given opportunity to speak, the more he's showing that he's not a leader, he's a tribal, and he's also a narcissist. When you look at Bull Mail, he's a narcissist. Psychologically, he needs help. Because as a leader, when you're given a platform, you must be in consider of your people. Everything you do should be about the people. Look at the terminologies that he uses today, labeling those in Nasser as terrorists. In reality, the SPLA, SPLM are the terrorist organization, and that's why they had to change the name to SSPDF, because in a national community where I work at, they are labeled as a negative force. He's calling others terrorists while they're being bombed by him. As you can see, Bull Mill is speaking as a president right now. He's not speaking as a vice president. He's speaking as a president. And at the same time, he's calling a national community, but he's also sanctioned for corruption and so many things throughout the crisis. Bull Mill is not a leader. His mindset possesses these three things, three ideologies. Our government our way, or we kill you. If you're not loyal to me, I'll kill you. And I'm going to politicize every situation so that I can create a division among you and you can fight yourself. The Uganda forces are in South Sudan killing your citizen, but you're labeling the citizens as terrorists. Bull Mill, you're showing us each and every day that you're worse than Kir. We cannot go from Bashir to Kir to Bull Mill. That's enough. Because South Sudanese are dying everywhere. If you look at our people, whether in Egypt, whether in Ethiopia or Sudan or Uganda or Kenya, even in the Western world, our people are dying. Generations are being wiped. In order for us to be free from this, we the people have to liberate ourselves, starting with the psychological things that have been embedded in our mind by the so-called leaders. I say this in most of my messages, that Nasser was a turning point for the people of South Sudan, because the government now sees that people do have power and they can change the things that are happening in the country, and their demands will be met. I don't condone the violence. I don't condone it in any shape or form. But people are getting tired and they're getting weary. So for us as South Sudanese, we need to be more nationalists. Let's not possess the ideology that these leaders have in South Sudan so they can continue to kill us and continue to be in power. All of us are suffering. There's nobody that's not suffering in South Sudan. I mean, you can argue and say, you know what? The leaders, they got their children in good schools and all that. Where are they going to go work at? They can't come into a country that's insecure. And that's why a majority of kids are still outside the country, even though they have this great education and have money. They cannot come home. So still, they're all the same boat. So let's work on liberating ourselves first, and then we can correct these leaders and drive them out of our country. Because at this point, these leaders do have to leave. Thank God a lot of them are leaving. because of old age, generational exit. But there are those that are younger that do possess these three deadly ideologies that they use to kill us. So I end that with that. Many of you might disagree with me, but we do need to be a nationalist, because we're all in this together.